Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we unpack complex topics to find the truly essential takeaways. Today we're tackling something, well, potentially paradoxical, a major sustainability report from a global mining company. Now, for many, mining and sustainability seem like almost opposing forces, an oxymoron, really. So our goal today is to see how this report claims to reimagine mining and, what that actually looked like, aiming to improve people's lives.
Indeed, it is a fascinating look, isn't it? How an industry often seen as purely extractive tries to balance that with, well, its responsibilities. Responsibilities to people, communities, the planet. It's a complex web. Our mission is basically to pull out the most compelling bits, the surprising facts, the key progress points in this very extensive document. Give you a shortcut to understanding what a truly sustainable mining future might possibly entail.
Okay, let's unpack this then. So the report kicks off with this quite powerful vision, mining for safer, smarter, more sustainable future. It talks about combining integrity, creativity, and smart innovation to unlock enduring value. But let's be honest, value in mining has traditionally meant shareholder returns, right? Does this report genuinely seem to broaden that definition? And, how tangibly?
That's the crucial question, isn't it? And what's striking here, I think, is the explicit mention of unlocking value not just for shareholders. They specifically say equally for their people, local communities, customers, and, interestingly, the world at large. Now, is it just rhetoric? Well, they align it with their stated purpose, connecting resources to those who need them. And crucially, it commits them, or says it commits them, to using more precise tech, less energy, less water, basically aiming to shrink their physical footprint for every ton produced. It's a shift, definitely a shift in framing.
A grand ambition, absolutely. So when they talk about distributing this value, what does that actually look like in hard numbers? Where does the money flow?
Right, the numbers. And the scale is, well, staggering. In 2024, they distributed $24.3 billion in cash value. But the distribution is the key insight here, I think. It's not just one big pot. For example, $4 billion went to wages and benefits. That's significant. $3.9 billion in taxes and royalties to governments. So public funds, a huge chunk, $15.7 billion went to suppliers. That supports a whole other ecosystem. And while, yes, $2.4 billion went to capital providers, there was also $145 million specifically for community and social investment. It paints a picture of a really deep economic footprint, potentially redefining who benefits from the value they talk about.
Okay, and what about their core products? Copper, iron ore. You even mentioned polyhalite. How do they fit into the sustainability story, especially with big global shifts like decarbonization happening?
Yeah, they're clearly trying to position their products as future enabling. It's a strategic narrative. Copper, for instance, it made up 30% of their production, 26% of revenue in 2024. And they highlight it as critical for decarbonization. Renewables, grids, EVs, they all need lots of copper. Iron ore, well, that's fundamental, but they frame it as key for low-carbon infrastructure. Their premium product helps steelmakers cut emissions, apparently. But yeah, the polyhalite one is interesting. It's from their Woodsmith project over in the UK. They're pitching it as an attractive low-carbon fertilizer. This feels like more than just a new product. It's maybe a strategic pivot, a mining giant getting into sustainable agriculture inputs. It shows how they might be trying to align resource extraction with global food security needs using a low-carbon angle.
Okay, so strategically repositioning products, distributing economic value. But an operation this size relies heavily on its people. The report flags safety as its first value, yet mining is inherently risky. We know fatalities still happen. How do they translate that value into practice while acknowledging these very real and ongoing challenges?
You're absolutely right to raise that. It's critical. And they do acknowledge it, the deeply saddening reality of 3 fatalities at managed operations in 2024. That has to be said up front. It underlines the risks, despite all efforts. However, they also point to achieving their lowest ever injury rate. The TIIF, that's Total Recordable Injury Frequency Rate, was 1.57 in 2024, down from 1.78 the year before. One key initiative they really push is visible felt leadership. Now, that sounds like corporate speak, but what it apparently means is getting leaders out from behind desks onto the front line, engaging directly, talking about risks openly, showing safety matters. They claim this led to a 24% improvement in these leadership engagements, and maybe more importantly, a massive 94% jump in reporting high-potential hazards. That suggests a more proactive culture, perhaps, people feeling safer to speak up.
That frontline engagement does sound promising. But what about contractors? That's often a major issue in heavy industry, isn't it? They often do higher risk jobs and can be overrepresented in accident stats. Does the report address contractor safety specifically?
Yes, it does. And it's an important point. How do you ensure safety for everyone, not just direct employees? Especially contractors doing potentially riskier tasks. They've developed something called a Contractor Performance Management Framework, or CPM. It's apparently fully rolled out in places like Brazil, Chile, Peru. The idea is to integrate contractors properly into their own safety systems. Risk-based planning, proper oversight. It's framed as valuing every single person working for them equally, ensuring the same safety standards apply, which seems, well, essential.
Okay, beyond just physical safety, what about overall well-being, health, diversity, inclusion? Are they looking more holistically at their workforce?
It does seem like a broadening perspective. Beyond just preventing accidents, they talk about actively fostering wellness. There's a new total health standard approved in 2024. It goes beyond just occupational illness, looking at wider wellness factors, even things like accommodation, catering, and there's a definite shift mentioned away from just relying on PPE, personal protective equipment, towards controlling hazards at the design stage, using modern tech like remote operations, autonomous vehicles, trying to engineer out the risk. They also highlight specific health challenges like HIV/AIDS and TB in Southern Africa. Their programs there seem to be having some positive impact, a lower HIV conversion rate in 2024, and they've reversed an upward trend in TB incidents. So, targeted health interventions too.
I was also genuinely struck by some of their policies around broader social issues that like employees. One in particular stood out.
Ah, yes. I think I know which one you mean. They're recognizing and responding to domestic violence policy. It is quite noteworthy, especially for the sector. It offers very practical support, paid leave, flexible working, financial help, even safe accommodation for those affected. And crucially, it also addresses accountability for perpetrators, including potential disciplinary action or referral to treatment. That's a significant commitment, going way beyond the workplace norm. On inclusion and diversity more broadly, they report maintaining 26% women overall and hitting 35% women in management, which actually exceeded their 2023 target of 33%. They also mentioned specific apprenticeship schemes, like one for cybersecurity in the UK rated outstanding by Ofsted, and disability-focused ones. And they even have this global workforce advisory panel to get employee views straight to the board. Seems like an effort to embed diverse perspectives.
Right, so managing internal impacts is one thing, but how are they actively building relationships with the communities outside the mine gates, fostering economic growth beyond just paying wages? This is often where the real test of sustainability lies, isn't it?
Absolutely. This is often the make or break area. They talk about their Thriving Communities pillar and a Collaborative Regional Development or CRD program. The big ambition here is supporting 5 off-site jobs for every 1 on-site job by 2030. That's audacious. They say they've already supported over 157,000 jobs through these programs since 2018. In 2024, the ratio was 2.9 off-site jobs per on-site job. So they're getting closer to their interim target for 2025. It suggests a real focus on building broader economic ecosystems, not just being an isolated employer. Aiming for long-term community resilience is the idea.
Can you give us some concrete examples, initiatives that maybe go beyond just basic job creation or welfare and point towards more self-sustaining development?
Sure. There are a few interesting ones highlighted. In South Africa, for example, there's the Rustenburg Fresh Produce Market. It supports small-scale local farmers by providing a dedicated marketplace, helping them become more commercially independent. In Peru, this Moquegua Emerge program trained over 1,100 young people and supported nearly 100 local businesses, and they calculated a social return on investment, SROI, for that one, between $3.30 and $5.45, generating a social value for every dollar invested. That's quite impressive, suggests real impact. And the one that really caught my eye was in Chile. They co-partnered to develop and launch the country's first hydrogen bus in December 2024, a 30-seater with a 600-kilometer range. That's not just community support, it's actively investing in regional innovation and a low-carbon future, leveraging partnerships for broader development.
Those sound quite positive, definitely beyond just handing out checks. But, for our audience who follow this topic, we often hear about pilot programs or initiatives that look good on paper. How does the report suggest these are genuinely scalable or, perhaps more importantly, sustainable for the communities after the company eventually leaves?
That's a very fair challenge. The report emphasizes this collaborative regional development model, the CRD. The idea is precisely that projects should be co-created with the local government, communities, other partners. This is meant to build local ownership and reduce long-term dependence on the company. The SROI figures, like for the Peru example, are presented as one indicator of potential economic viability and self-sustenance. If a project generates more value than it costs, it has a better chance, right? While obviously every program is different, The stated shift is towards empowering local entrepreneurship, building local capacity, developing infrastructure, things designed to outlast the mine's presence, rather than just, say, short-term handouts.
That distinction between handouts and empowerment is crucial. Okay, shifting gears now to one of mining's biggest headaches, waste. Traditionally, mining generates enormous volumes of waste rock and tailings, often a huge environmental liability. How is this company tackling waste and materials management through the sustainability lens? Are they doing anything different?
This is where it gets really interesting, I think. They're explicitly talking about applying circular economy principles to mining waste. At their Minas Rio iron ore operation in Brazil, get this, they turned discarded processed material, tailings basically, into 293,000 paving blocks in 2024. And all of those were donated to local municipalities for infrastructure projects. That's literally turning a liability, something that needs managing, into a valuable community asset, building roads from mine waste. Globally, they also report diverting 74% of their non-mineral waste from disposal through recycling and reuse in 2024. And they're exploring even more ambitious things, like turning mineral waste into nutrient-rich topsoil for farming, or using it in construction materials. It's a fundamental rethink. Waste is a potential resource. If they can scale that, it could be transformative.
Wow, okay. Paving blocks from tailings, that's certainly innovative. Beyond waste material, what about water? Environmental impact generally, but water specifically. How are they managing our water footprint, especially in water-stressed areas where mining often operates?
Water is absolutely critical, especially as many mines are in dry regions. Their big goal is to cut freshwater withdrawals by 50% by 2030 against a 2015 baseline. By the end of 2024, they report they'd achieved a 27% reduction, so progress is being made. Their overall water efficiency, how much they recycle and reuse, was up to 86% group-wide. A key example they give is the Los Bronces copper mine in Chile, a very water-stressed region. It already reuses about 90% of its water, which is high. But the goal is zero freshwater intake by 2030. How? By switching completely to treated municipal wastewater from Santiago and desalinated water. Huge infrastructure investments, obviously. They're also investing heavily in new processing technologies like coarse particle recovery, CPR, and hydraulic dewatered stacking HDS. Now, these sound technical, but they're really important. They allow for much drier storage of the leftover mining waste, the tailings. This significantly boosts water recycling, but also makes the stored waste much more stable, reducing the risk of those catastrophic dam failures we worry about. And it helps with eventual land reclamation, too.
Right. And speaking of waste storage tailings dams, they are a massive concern for the industry and communities, given some truly devastating past failures globally. What's their approach to managing this critical risk? Does it go beyond just the technical stuff, the engineering, to engage with the people who might be affected?
Yes, they categorize tailings dam failure as a catastrophic risk, top tier. And they state they are rigorously implementing the Global Industry Standard on Tailings Management, the GSTM, across all their sites. That's becoming the benchmark. But their approach seems to extend beyond just compliance and engineering. A really interesting example they provide is from their Mogalakwena PGM operation in South Africa. They actually conduct regular emergency response exercises with 15 neighboring communities living downstream. This isn't just a tabletop exercise. It involves testing emergency sirens, simulating evacuation routes along designated paths. And they've trained 75 local emergency management volunteers from these communities in disaster management and first aid. That level of active, practical engagement seems designed to build trust and genuine preparedness, not just tick a box. They're also building a new large-scale filtration plant at that Minas Rio site in Brazil. The aim is to reduce the amount of waste deposited on the tailings dam by up to 85% by dewatering it first, and significantly boost water recirculation. It's a proactive step to reduce the long-term risk profile.
Okay, so managing their direct footprint is clear. But what about broader environmental issues in the regions where they operate? Things that might not be directly caused by their mining activities, but affect the local environment and community health.
That's an interesting aspect they touch upon. In Santiago, Chile, for example, a city known for air pollution challenges, largely from traffic and, significantly, residential wood burning in winter. Not mining related. They've launched an emissions compensation plan there. It's linked to their nearby Los Bronces mine's operational emissions. Part of this plan involves actively replacing inefficient domestic wood burners in Santiago homes with cleaner electric heating systems. They project this will not only improve air quality by reducing particulate matter, but also yield significant public health benefits, potentially saving the health system hundreds of millions over time. Additionally, linked to this, they acquired an 11,000-hectare property called the Los Nogales Sanctuary in early 2024. This is just for biodiversity offsetting related to the mine. It's a broader conservation effort. It shows a kind of thinking that goes beyond just their fence line, acknowledging their role in the wider regional environment and taking steps to contribute positively, even on issues they don't directly cause.
And finally, looking really long term, what happens when the minerals run out? When the mining stops? Mine closure is a huge legacy issue. How are they planning for closure? Is it just about cleaning up the site, or are they aiming for something more lasting, more positive?
They talk about a regenerative approach to mine closure, which is quite a strong word. The key thing is that they say planning starts right back in the exploration phase, before digging even begins. It's meant to be integrated throughout the mine's life. They've developed a specific model called the PMLU ecosystem model that's post-mining land use. It's been piloted at their Amandelbolt PGM mine in South Africa. You can think of this PMLU model as a dynamic blueprint. It's planned from day one, outlining how the land can be transformed into diverse, hopefully self-sustaining assets after mining finishes. The model helps identify and prioritize projects that aim to maximize value for all stakeholders post-closure. Examples they give include developing mixed agriculture businesses on land, expanding nature reserves for conservation and maybe ecotourism, and even building large-scale renewable energy, like a 300-hectare solar PV project on foreign mining land. So the goal isn't just remediation, it's about trying to create alternative livelihoods, functioning ecosystems, and ongoing value long after the primary mining activity has ceased.
Hmm. This deep dive certainly reveals a mining company, or at least its report, outlining a profound transformation. It suggests a move beyond just resource extraction towards embedding themselves as, well, they hope, a force for good, from the tech innovations to the community development aspects.
Indeed. And they frame it very strategically themselves. Sustainability and innovation competencies key to accessing and unlocking growth. It's presented not just as the right thing to do, but as essential for business success. Building trust, reducing risks, delivering financial value, yes, but all supposedly linked to making a positive contribution. Their adherence to external standards, like IRMA, the Initiative for Responsible Mining Assurance, is highlighted. And they mention that 14 of their 17 operations have already been audited against sustainability certifications. This transparency and external verification adds some weight, suggesting it's not just internal reporting.
Yeah, this report paints a really compelling picture of what reimagining mining could actually entail, combining the technology, the engineering with a much more holistic view of human well-being, environmental stewardship, community partnership, acknowledging responsibility across the whole life cycle and even beyond. Of course, as with any sustainability report, the real proof is always in the sustained long-term impact on the ground, isn't it?
Absolutely. But it does suggest a possible future direction for major industries, not just about efficiency and profit margins anymore, but about deeply integrating responsibility across the entire value chain, from how they secure the minerals the world needs for transitions to how they actively empower communities and how they restore the land afterwards. It presents a robust case, from their perspective, for how a company like this sees itself as a partner in tackling global challenges, not just an extractor.
So what does this all mean for you listening as you think about the industries that shape our world, technology, energy, food, materials? What kind of reimagining do you think they need to undergo to be truly sustainable in the long run? And how can their sustainability reports, their public statements move beyond just, glossy brochures and compliance checklists? How can they genuinely reflect measurable positive impact for everyone involved, employees, communities, customers, and the planet? That's definitely something to mull over.